On this edition of the Lynch List, I'm going to be ranking the most underrated fighters in the UFC per division. We're going to go through each division. I'll tell you which fighters I think are underrated and why. And at the end of this video, let me know some of the fighters you think are underrated or ones that maybe you disagree with on this list. And we're going to start first in the Flyweight division, 125 pounds. And the first name I'm going to talk about in that division is Manel Kape. So why is Manel Kape underrated? Well, just for the simple fact that this guy can't seem to get a top opponent. At the time of recording this, it's August 30th. He's going to be fighting Felipe Dos Santos next week at UFC 293. You see, he was supposed to fight Kai Kara France. This guy can't seem to get a top flight opponent. His last opponent, David Dvorak, was ranked, but I feel like he needs a serious step up. And I think this is a guy that does not get enough credit in the division when you're talking about contenders in the weight class. He's knocked out a couple of guys, Ode Osborne, Zalgas. Those are two really good wins. One of his losses, Mateusz Nicolau. If you go look on MMA decisions, that fight, not a single media member scored the fight from Mateusz Nicolau. They scored, all of them scored it for Manel Kape. You just don't ever see that, really. Usually it's, you get maybe one or two media members going the other way, but a lot of people felt like Kape did enough to win that fight. Of course, he had a pretty good career over in Ryzen in Japan prior to signing with the UFC. The thing for me is this guy's got some serious power. We just don't see a lot of that in this division. And, one of his losses, by the way, as well, the other loss that he had was against Alexander Pantoja, who last time I checked is the flyweight champion. This guy does not get enough respect. Again, a lot of this has to do with opponents falling out and other things, but Manel Kape for me 100% is an underrated fighter and goes in this spot. Now, my next pick for underrated flyweight fighter is probably going to surprise a lot of people. In fact, people are probably going to say, you know what? I could say the opposite. I could say this guy's overrated, but to me, it's Muhammad Mokaev. Now, you're probably going to be like, James, why are you having on this list? Well, I think people forget that this guy is super young in the weight class. If you look at Muhammad Mokaev throughout his career, we'll just have a quick look here. He is, again, 22 years old, 23? It's pretty young here. 23 years old, okay? I think that's the first place we got to start here. He's just got 9 fights, but people are really nitpicking at his last couple fights, which he won, by the way. The Malcolm Gordon fight, there was a few moments in that one. It's cutting it a little bit close. And then his last fight against Filio, who's a pretty good opponent himself. He's a guy that, again, had a few moments in that fight. He hurt his knee, I remember, in that one. Again, this guy does not get enough respect. I know going into the fight, he's a favorite in pretty much all of the fights that he's had. But I think the fact that people forget he's only 23 years old, he's getting better every fight. And, he's going to be fighting Tim Elliott in a fight again. He's going to be favored in. I just think in general, this guy doesn't get enough respect when we're talking about up and comers. And I think, again, he's done everything he's supposed to do. I think every fight, it's not going to be flawless every single time, So I think Muhammad Mokaev, in my opinion, is a little bit underrated. We don't talk about him enough in the flyweight division. So he is going on my 125 list. And I'll throw one more on there. How about a guy that Mokaev trains with and has also, had his fair share of proving people wrong, and that's Cody Durden. Look at him in this weight class. Cody Durden, you can see they're 16-4-1, 32 years old, but look at this win streak. JP Bays, actually forget about that. UFC debut against Gutierrez. That first round, he looked great in that fight, ended up going to a draw with Gutierrez up a weight class. He fights Jimmy Flick. He would want that one back, I'm sure. Orichi Lang, good win there. Mokaev, again, I talked about him being underrated. He's very good. And then look at this. JP Bays, Mata, Johnson, Hadley, especially Hadley was an underdog in that fight. Durden's a guy that has really turned a corner in his career, and I think he's a guy that needs a little bit more respect. I do see he's in the rankings now, which is well-deserved, but Cody Durden, in my opinion, also underrated in the flyweight division. So we got 3 for that division. The next division we're going to look at, I've got 2 names, and the first name we're going to go with is Song Yadong. Now, Song Yadong is a guy that, again, I think people forget how young he is. He is 25 years old. He got in the UFC really early, and a lot of people were saying, I'm kind of iffy on him, but, you look at some of the opponents that he beat, a couple of these guys, obviously Morales and Arante is not in the UFC, Alejandro Perez as well. Cody Stamen fought him to a draw, which at the time Cody was 18-2. That's not bad, right? Marlon Chito Vera, I know there was a controversial decision, but the fact he even went the distance with Chito Vera and seeing how good Chito is, that's pretty impressive. Did have the loss to Kyler Phillips. Casey Kenny, that was a good win for him there. Kenny was 16-3 at the time. Julio Arce finished him. He finished Marlon Moraes. This is where we started seeing him turn a corner pretty much after the Kenny fight. And then the Corey Sandhagen fight was a doctor stoppage. So that was a pretty competitive fight. Like Corey clearly was winning, But again, that was a nice performance. And then Ricky Simón, Simón was coming off that really nice win over Jack Shore. And then Song Yadong comes out and, basically dominates him the fight. So Song Yadong's on here as well. Again, just for the simple fact that, just 25 years old, I don't think people talk enough about him being, sort of a future champion in this division. And I think he's got the tools to make it. He's looked very impressive. So Song Yadong definitely makes this list. Here's one that I know I'm going to get some pushback on just because a lot of people don't like him, but I do. And I think he's very underrated, and that's Merab Dvalishvili. Now, at the time of recording this, obviously there's a lot going on with the division, him not wanting to fight his teammate, Aljamain Sterling, but you can't deny the skills here. 16-4, 32 years old. A lot of guys do not want to fight Merab Dvalishvili. Just go look back to, his early UFC fights. Rafion Stotts, I think people forget this in Ring of Combat. Forget about his UFC career. The fight that got him into the UFC, he knocked out Rafion Stotts in 15 seconds. That's super impressive, and I don't hear anyone talking about that. The Frankie Saenz fight, let's go have a quick look at that. Most people thought Merab won that fight, so he kind of gets screwed over there in that matchup, right? And then whoops, I missed his name. Got to go look back at that 1 second here. That's why we're doing this on the fly here, people. So he loses to Frankie Stein. And then a really weird fight with Ricky Simón where Simón gets a guillotine choke. It ends at the end of the fight. Go watch that fight again. There was some iffy stuff going on there. But anyways, after that, Terrion Ware Bracatona, Casey Kenny was a big win at the time. Gustavo Lopez, John Dodson, Cody Stamen, finishes Marlon Moraes, ran into a little bit of trouble earlier there, beats Jose Aldo. Like, that is it. I know Aldo, left the UFC after that, but that's still a great win on the resume to have, the former featherweight champion Jose Aldo. And then how about Piotr Jan? Everyone counted him out in that fight, except for me and a few other people. A lot of people thought Jan was going to win that. He was a big underdog in that one. He goes out there and gets it done. I think Jan is underrated for a bunch of different reasons, aside from the fact, people might not like his style, but he's getting it done. That's the big thing. And it's a style that is tricky for a lot of different fighters here. He should be getting the next title shot at the time we're recording this. Like I mentioned, August 30th. This is a guy that is underrated by the fans for the whole Aljo thing, and he's underrated as a fighter as well. So Merab has to be on this list as an underrated fighter in the Bantamweight division. Okay. Going to get things a little bit lighter as we're moving along here. Let's go to featherweight. And I don't think it's any secret here. Movsar Ivoiliev is definitely got to be the most underrated guy here. He's 17-0. Nobody talks about this guy enough when it comes to fighting contenders in the weight class. And I know he had a tough fight against Diego Lopez where Lopez had him in a couple submission holds, but we see how good the ground game is, and he survived that. The fight before that, Dan Ige, that's a really good win. Like, that fight wasn't close. Hakeem Dawodu, that fight wasn't close. The problem with Voliev is that he just does not fight that much. And so there's been a little bit of a momentum stall. And then there's been some other issues, visa and stuff like that. But I mean, look at this guy, 29 years old, 17-0. Who wants to face this guy in the featherweight division? Nobody. Very underrated in the weight class. I would not be surprised if this guy's either fighting for a title or at the very least fighting contenders here pretty soon, because he is just a bad matchup for a lot of people in this weight class, and he does not get nearly enough credit. So the easy pick for this division by far is Movsar Ivoiliev, in my opinion. Okay, let's get to the lightweight division, and I'm going to go with a guy that, I think is underrated and doesn't get enough credit here. That's Grant Dawson. And Grant definitely proved that in his last fight, and even I made a mistake in that one. I said Demir was going to win that, and Grant Dawson gets it done. Look, 21-1. American fighter, young guy, look, 29 years old, not that young, but, entering the prime of his career. He's made a lot of strides since going to ATT. I think we can all agree with that. The only fight he didn't look great in, let's be honest here, in his UFC career, was against, which fight am I thinking of? The Ricky Glenn fight, which was a draw. And I believe that was his last fight under Glory MMA. And then after that, he went to not Killcliff, American Top Team. And we've just seen him perform very well here. And it's, again, for him, it's a bit of a slower move for him. Remember, they put him against Mike Trezano at featherweight, and they're like, hey, let's see who the better prospect is. And it was Grant. He finished him in that fight. Finished Derek Minner. Finished Leo Santos late in the fight. Jared Gordon got a finish there. Mark Madsen, he missed weight there, but that was a fight again where people thought Madsen was going to out-wrestle him. Grant ended up getting it done here. And then Demir, Demir's a guy that makes everyone look bad when they fight him, and Grant dominated him in that fight. And I know Demir's getting up there a little bit, but Grant Dawson for sure is an underrated fighter, and he can't seem to get opponents. I hope it's a big year for him in 2024, because I think Grant is going to be a force to be reckoned with in this division. So Grant Dawson, easy pick for me in the lightweight division. Okay, let's get to 170, shall we? And you guys know where I'm going with this. I probably do every video I try and mention this guy, but it's Shavkat Rakhmonov easily. Shavkat, for a variety of reasons, if he spoke English, if he was outspoken, if he had like an ounce of, that, boisterous personality, this guy would be getting bigger fights. It's just unfortunate what's happened at the time of recording this. He was supposed to fight Calvin Gastelum. That fight hasn't worked out. Now he's trying to call out MVP. He shouldn't have to call out MVP. He should be fighting contenders right now. He is 17-0. He is coming off a very impressive win over Jeff Neal in his last fight. I know people say he got hit a bit in that fight, but look, finishing Jeff Neal is an extremely good feat because no one in the UFC has finished Jeff Neal before. Made quick work of Neil Magny, Carlton Harris, Prazeres, Oliveira. This guy's finishing everyone. He fought some great opposition outside the UFC as well. I mean, look at this resume. He even has a win over Jung Young Park, who fights in the UFC now at middleweight. Like, he has a win over him. He is so good, man. Like, he will be fighting for a title one day. He may even win the title. I think I did another video on him as well, but doesn't get enough respect here. And I feel like there's got to be more noise about the urgency of getting him a top flight opponent here. I suggested Kamaru Usman at the time of recording this. I think that makes perfect sense. I know they train together, but again, that to me makes the most sense here. But yeah, Shavkat, most underrated at welterweight, hands down. Let's move along to the middleweight division. I've actually got two choices for the middleweight division. Start with the Brazilian first, Caio Borrello. This guy, good win streak in the weight class, right? Let's have a quick look here. 30 years old, entering the prime of his career, 14-1, Contender Series vet. Has a win over Aaron Jeffrey as well in Contender Series, which, Aaron's been doing quite well over in Bellator, coming off a nice win himself. Fought Jailton Almeida in grappling. Like, this guy's done it all, man. Maybe not the best opposition coming to the UFC, but look at it. Gadzi took him out. Petrosian took him out. Muradov, Olashechuk gets a finish there. Fighting Nursulin in the next fight coming up here in November. I really like this guy, and he's another guy that I don't think gets enough respect in this weight class. He's a guy to keep an eye on in this division. Great prospect here, Borrello. Borrello, I always butcher it. Caio, we'll start with that. The Brazilian, the natural, he's got to be on this list for sure as far as underrated middleweights. And I'm going to throw another middleweight out here, and you might think he's underrated or not, but Roman Dolidze, I think, is very underrated in this weight class. Who wants to face this guy? Look at him, even his Tapology profile photo. You want to be in the back alley with this guy? 12-2 record. I know he's a little bit older. That's the only concern here. He's 35. But, I mean, let's go do a little bit of quick, revisionist history here. Comes into the UFC, gets a finish, fights Trevin Giles. If you look at the scorecards for that fight on MMA Decisions, which is what I've been referencing here, most people thought he won that fight, or at least it was down the middle. Not his greatest performance, absolutely, but Roman Dolidze, outside of that, Staropoli beats him. Brutalized Kyle Dawkins. I mean, that was a brutal beatdown. Phil Hawes knocked him out. And how about Jack Hermanson finishing him? Like, that's super impressive too. And, that was a fight where it wasn't looking so good early, and then he comes back and beats Hermanson. And the Vettori fight, people get mad at me when I talk about this being a close fight. I thought he won this fight, and I don't think I'm alone here. There's a lot of media members who felt like he beat Vettori as well. Super close fight. Vettori's tough to finish. I think if Vettori had, slightly less good of a chin, maybe Dolidze beats him up. But the reason I think, Dolidze is underrated is just because he's good everywhere, right? Good stand-up, good ground game. This guy is dangerous everywhere you go. I am almost positive he beats Derek Brunson coming up here in October. This guy's a beast. Roman Dolidze, underrated fighter for sure. Okay, let's move up to the 205-pound division. I've got a couple names here that I'm going to throw out. Let's throw out the first one, and that is Alexander Rakic. I don't think this guy gets talked about enough. And, granted, he's on the sidelines right now. He has not fought since that Jan Blachowicz fight. A lot of people have a bit of revisionist history when it comes to Alexander Rakic in that Jan Blachowicz fight. I thought it was even. I thought it was pretty close before the injury. And Jan Blachowicz is a tough guy in that weight class. Even a guy like Alex Pereira in his last fight couldn't finish him, took him to the scorecards, had a close fight there. Nice win over Thiago Santos. Nice win over Anthony Smith. Couldn't finish Anthony, but that was a brutal beatdown. The Ozdemir fight, I actually thought he won. And then outside of that, a lot of good wins here. And the thing with Rakic as well, you look at the age there, 31. He's right in the prime of his career, 14-3 record. They got to be talking more about this guy in the weight class. He is outstanding. Big Alexander Rakic fan. Very underrated in the weight class. And another name we got to throw in here as well. I don't think this is a huge surprise here. Magomed Ankalaev. Come on, man. 18-1-1. The one loss to Paul Craig, which Paul Craig is Mr. Submission. Like, he's even submitted Jamal Hill. Like, outside of that, this guy's been dominant. Now, look, is it the most exciting style in the world? No, but it gets the job done. Reminds me a bit of Merab a little bit, right? Same sort of thing. People don't like that, but 2 wins over Kutalaba, 2 finishes. Krylov, good win. Ozdemir, good win. Thiago Santos, good win. Finishes Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith, first time he's been finished at light heavyweight. Even John Jones couldn't do that. Good win there. And then the draw with Jan, a lot of people felt like he won that. Again, go look at the media scorecards here. Most thought Ankalaev won. Most people did not think it was a draw. So if he wins that fight, does Jamal Hill fight for a vacant title? No, it's probably Ankalaev. It's funny how the sport works like that, right? And the other thing is, you know, now he has to fight Johnny Walker, which I guess, because, I mean, let's call it like it is. The only reason Ankalaev is not fighting for a title right now is Dana White didn't like that fight. And he said, look, I think now you need to fight, someone else for the title, or you need to fight someone else and then get your title shot. We need to see more. But if we were treating this like a sport, not an entertainment, sports entertainment, I should say, Ankalaev would be fighting for the title right now. There's no question. He would be fighting Yuri Prohaska right now, but he's not. He's fighting Johnny Walker. And I think he beats Johnny Walker. I'm very impressed with Ankalaev. And, you know, I wish the guy did more media. You know, it's something he said after his last fight. I want to be more fan friendly. I don't know where this guy is. I don't even know where he's training right now, but he is a guy that I think is very much underrated, and I could absolutely see him being champion. I think he's that good in the weight class. Very underrated guy. Magomed Ankalaev, again, 31 years old in the prime. He's got a draw and 1 loss, and he's got 18 wins. This guy's great. Magomed Ankalaev, most underrated. And for heavyweight, there's a couple different ways I could have gone with this, but I got to go with the obvious one, and that's Stipe Miocic. This guy is so underrated in general. Look, am I going to pick him to beat John Jones coming up here in November? No, I'm not. But 41 years old, still kicking, 20-4 record. I remember when he lost to Stefan Struve, and then I remember when he lost to Junior Dos Santos, and I thought, okay, this guy will be a contender, but he'll never win a title. And he went on a crazy run after that. He knocks out Mark Hunt, finishes Arlovsky, finishes Verdum to win the title. Overeem, Dos Santos, Ngannou, all great wins. He's got 2 wins over Cormier. Cormier, hey, gets a I'm not going to say lucky punch, but gets a quick punch in that first fight. And what does Stipe do? He goes, you know what? I'm going to really prove that I'm the better guy. I'm going to beat you not once, but twice. He beats him 2 times after that, loses the fight to Ngannou. Not a great night for him, I'll be honest, but never got the trilogy with Ngannou because he left the UFC. This guy is, in my opinion, you could make the argument he's the best heavyweight of all time. I still think him and Fedor, there's a good argument for that. Stipe never gets the respect he deserves for a variety of reasons. The main one being he's just not like a big personality. You know, if this guy had any sort of Conor McGregor in him, this guy would be one of the most popular fighters in the world, but that's just not his style. He's a stoic kind of, low-key guy, but he's entertaining. That's the other thing I don't get. Like, this guy he's not fighting you to a decision. He's trying to go out there and finish you for the most part. I mean, look at all these wins. These are impressive. Really good resume there. Great guy. Stipe for sure is underrated. As far as like other guys in the weight class that I could put on here as well, I was debating with Sergey Pavlovich. Even I've underrated Pavlovich a lot in terms of the weight class, so I would accept him. And I think Curtis Blaydes is very underrated too. I know he's had a couple key knockout losses, but outside of that, I think he's one of the best wrestlers in the division, if not the best wrestler. I think Blaydes is very underrated too, but I got to go with Stipe just because of the years and years and years of people underrating him. And then, how about the whole thing that he's fighting Cormier, and Cormier is working for ESPN, and Cormier is a fan favorite and everyone loves him. And it's like almost like Stipe got pushed to the side. That always kind of rubbed me the wrong way a bit. And Stipe, yeah, for me is definitely the most underrated. So let's do a quick recap here. Stipe Miocic, we'll work our way down. Alexander Rakic, Magomed Ankalaev, Borello, and Roman Dolidze. Shavkat Rakhmonov at 170. Grant Dawson at lightweight. Voliev at 145. Song Yadong and Merab Dvalishvili at 135. And then Manel Kopp, Muhammad Mokaev, and Cody Durden at 125. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Look, I know there's going to be some picks on here you disagree with. Let's just have a fun discussion about this. It's just a fun, arbitrary, thing talking about who is underrated and who isn't. There's a lot of different ways I could have gone with this, but I factored in age. I factored in just what people are talking about, some of the criticisms, all these things. So that all kind of came into the equation. And if there's anyone on here you think I missed, I'd love to hear from it. I tried to do my best going through the entire roster and thinking of, names, and I'm sure I did miss a few on here, but let me know who you think is underrated and who should be added to this list. And maybe this is a list I'll keep updating every couple months because I know there's always going to be new fighters and fighters that don't get enough respect, and certainly open to hearing your arguments on that one. So follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram at Lynch on Sports. And if you got any other ideas for tier videos, let me know in the comments. I'm always liking listening to you guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.